Hello everyone and welcome to Azam Shah Weekly. In this video we are going to cover how we can create a grid layout in SwiftUI. So first let's go ahead and take a look at what we'll be building in this video. You can see that I have a cat being displayed and this is in a list, so I can go through different animals. And I also have a slider control which is currently just saying one selection, meaning that it's just dividing into one row or one column, in other words. Let's go ahead and move the slider. And you can see now the animals are being divided into 3 columns, 4 columns, 5 columns, 6, 7, even 8 columns. There are total 9 animals. And this is exactly what we'll be building, how we can create a grid in SwiftUI. We're going to start our application with a normal app. You can see it does only have a navigation view with a vertical stack, and the navigation bar title is simply set to animals. So the first question is that what do we have to do to create that kind of a grid layout? And what we have to do is that we have to divide the array of items into different chunks, meaning one array can contain nested arrays. So let's go ahead and start with an array. So if we start with an array, and I can just go ahead and put an array over here, if I go ahead and display this array, it will always display in a list-wise fashion. But if I declare this array, or if I start to divide this array into an array of arrays, then I can maybe create another loop inside the array which will allow me to display 3 or 4 different elements. Right now you can see that we have an array, and we have an array with a couple of different items, and each item itself is an array. This means I can loop over the animals, but I can also loop over these things like the inner items. So let's go ahead and see that how we can do that. I'm going to go ahead and start with list self.animals. Now this is obviously when nobody is going to give you an array like this. The array will be just flat, and you will have to come up with a way to chunk the array or to divide the array into 2 or 3 or 4 or different items. But whenever you're starting out with something, keep it really simple. We are hard coding the array so that we know that it will work or not, and then we can work on to dividing the array or chunking or grouping the array into 2 or 3 items. But it's always important that when you start, you're starting with some sort of a predefined data. All right, so basically now what we're doing is we are going through an array. So list, and we have animals. We're going through the array, and we will get animal pair, which in this case will be, first time will be this one, then it will be this one, and then it will be this one, and then it will be this one, depending on the position of the loop. Now animal pair is also an array because this is actually an array. So most probably we can just loop over that one also. So we can use for each over here, passing in the animal pair, providing the ID, which is self, and this is going to give us a particular animal. And for each is going to return you a view. So let's go ahead and return this animal view. This animal is simply the item inside the second nested array. So basically it's talking about the cat or the tiger or one of these animals. Now if we go ahead and refresh our view over here on the right hand side, we can already see it working. Obviously the size of these animals are very, very small. We can always make them a little bit bigger by providing a system font or a size of whatever you want, like 100 or so. But you can definitely see that it is working. Now we can work on, if we had a whole array, how we can divide it into sub-array or sub-items. That is what we have to do next. For this, I'm going to go ahead and add a new group, and I will call it extensions, because I want the feature on the animals array, or basically any kind of an array. So I can go ahead and add a new file, and I will call this array plus extensions. Now all of the code that I'm about to write over here to chunk or to divide an array, I first created a playground file just to test out my algorithm, and then I created the extension. So it will be a good idea for you to add a playground file and check out that if the array extension that you're about to write even works or not. I'm going to go ahead and create an extension. I will call it an array because it's an extension on array. It's going to have a function called chunks. You can obviously name your function anything you want. And we are going to provide a size. If we are dividing the array into group of 2 or group of 3 or group of 5, this is going to return us the array slice of the element of the type of the array. So whatever the type of the element which are inside the array, it's going to be returning those elements. So it's not really hard-coded to integer or string or something else. It's whatever the contents of the array are. Next up, we're going to go ahead and create a variable called chunks, which is going to be returned at the end. So that is what we're going to create. Now we can start running a loop. So I'm going to go ahead and run the loop index in stride. So what exactly is stride? Stride means that you can go from one item to the other item, one location to the other location, and you can jump, like you can skip certain items by providing by value. So I'm going to start with 0. I am going to go to self.count -1, which basically is saying that we are going to go to the end of the array, whatever the array is, and we are going to be jumping based on the size. Basically, if the size is 2, so we're going to be starting with 0, and then 2, and then 4, and then 6. You get the idea, right? Inside over here, we are going to create a sub-element. So first, let me go over there at the end and return chunks, because that is the one that thing is going to be returned anyways. Inside this loop, I'm going to go ahead and create a chunk equals to array of slice. And obviously, this is not the only way to group an array. There are many different ways of doing the same thing. Let end equals to index plus size. So we're doing index plus size so we can find the next position. So index is 0, 0 plus 2 is 2. And then we can go ahead and check for something else. If the end is greater than equal to self.count, then we can simply get the whole chunk at the end, which means we can say self from the position where the loop is, and it's going to go till the end. So this is for cases where the actual size is not working out. Let's say that you have your size, you're defining it to be 4, and elements that you have in the array are 7. So the first chunk will be 4, which is fine, but the second chunk will be the remaining items, so 3. Else, we can go ahead and say chunk equals to self index ... the end. But there is another case also for elements that if the end plus 1 is equals to count, meaning if there's one lonely element left. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and say chunks.append new element, which in this case is a chunk. And the final case is end plus 1. So basically, these cases are like if you have 9 items or 11 items and you're trying to divide by 5, so there's always like 1 item remaining extra. So that's those cases. Equals to self.count. If it is, then we are going to get the remaining chunk equals to self, which is going to start with end, and which is going to go to self chunks.count. And again, we are going to say chunks.append the new element, which is the remaining chunk, which usually is just one item is left. Let's go ahead and build that. Okay, so this is great because now we have created chunks, an extension function on array, and we can just call it on an array. So now I can go back to my content view and I can actually use it over here in the list. So let's go ahead and use it. Before using this, I also want to add a slider control. So let's go ahead and add a slider control also. The slider control value will be going into a state variable. So state private var, and we will call it slider value. And this will be of type CG float, and we will start the value with 1. The slider control, we can simply copy paste it because it's simply a slider. So there we go. Simply a slider control, nothing much going on over here. All right, so we have the slider control. It's going to be basically dividing it into 8 chunks. That's the maximum number of chunks you can divide it. But this value 8 is not really fixed in stone. You can go ahead and change this value, or you can provide animal.count over here or something so that this value is dependent on the count of animals. The next thing that we need is a text box or text control, which is simply going to display us the how many chunks you're dividing into. Let's go ahead and refresh our preview so that you will be able to see the slider and you'll be able to see that how many chunks we'll be dividing into. Right now, you can see the stack is not really doing anything, meaning we are not displaying anything at this point. All right. And obviously, make sure that all of this is inside a VStack. That's why it was not displaying. There we go. Perfect. So we have the slider, we have the actual number, which is saying 1, which is fine. But now we have to update our list also, because right now this list is not being grouped or chunked together. So I'm going to now call chunk, and the size will be the size coming from the slider. So self.slider value. So we can simply pass in slider value. But slider value is in a different format, meaning it is CG float. So we can go ahead and convert it into slider or into an integer. Great. Next up, we're going to get access to the animal pair, which in this case we can just call it chunk. We're going to call it chunk, and then we can move over that chunk, meaning this is the inside array, the array that is inside it. We're going to get an item. We display the item. Let's go ahead and first build that. I think we still have some issues going on over here, right? So basically this is saying that it requires that string conform to string protocol. All right. So what we need to do is over here, we need to find out. So let's see what's going on over here. We have the chunk in for each chunk. We're going to self. We're calling it animal. That is fine. And let's see what's going on over here. So let's see if I simply display text animal. And let's go ahead and build this. So we have a outer loop over here, right over here, and the inner loop is actually going through a for each loop. Let's go ahead and refresh our control over here. We won't really see anything. We just say animal, 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 and animal, but we have to make sure that we are displaying the actual animal in this case, and not obviously the wording animal. So what exactly is the problem that we are facing? If we put animal over here, the actual value of the animal, which is coming from the array, it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is that look at the animal array. It's not supposed to be like that. We are already calling chunks on the array to make it into a group. So make sure that you're using just a flat array. So I'm going to go ahead and copy a flat array. And there we go. That's perfect. The The chunks function will be used to chunk it up or group it up into multiple items or multiple groups. So let's go ahead and run this again. Again, it's having some issues. There we go. So right now we have to make sure that the size of the text is increasing. And also you can see that if I run this app, let's go ahead and wait for it to run. And if I try to increase the number of groups, number of chunks, number of columns, whatever you want to call it, then the size of these animals is not really increasing. It's working out perfectly fine, but the size is just so small. So how can we implement that? Well, that's the text that we're using. So I can go ahead and I can base the text on the actual slider value. All right. So now you can see, since by default it is 1, meaning 1 column, the animals are being displayed in a list. But now if I go into 2, the animals are being displayed in a grid, and 3 and so much more, right? Pretty cool, right? So we were able to build that successfully in only a matter of minutes, and you can see that how the chunking of the array was able to help you build this stuff. If you liked this video and want to support my channel, then the best way would be to check out my SwiftUI course, SwiftUI Declarative Interfaces for any Apple device. This is a 16+ hour course, and you can see that we start from the very beginning, learning about the Swift list and navigation, even diving into the MVVM design pattern, which is the preferred pattern when you are working with SwiftUI applications. We will be creating also coffee ordering application, which is an advanced application. You will learn how to integrate it with a JSON API. You will also learn about core data, and then we will also create clones for the Apple stock application, as well as the Near Me application, which is going to be integrating with the MapKit and going to show you all the nearby places. In the end, you can see that we are also covering neuromorphic design using SwiftUI. This is the only and this is the complete course on SwiftUI on Udemy. So this is the best course, and you can get it. Simply check out the YouTube description. You will find the links in the YouTube description, and you can buy the course from there. Please use the links in the YouTube description, as it really helps me when you purchase a code or purchase a course using referral. Also in the YouTube description, you can find some other courses. So maybe you're interested in a course from Flutter or on machine learning or blockchain or augmented reality using ARKit, right? So, or testing. So there are many different courses I have, and your support is always appreciated. Thank you so much, and I really hope that you enjoy this video.